A shy girl undergoes a gynecological surgery. Shockingly, her doctor is a young millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Lena stood in front of the large hospital, the tall glass windows reflecting the gray skies above. Her hands trembled slightly, despite her attempts to steady them. Today was the day she had finally gathered the courage to go through with the gynecological surgery that she had been putting off for years. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the procedure itself or the fact that she would be under the care of someone she barely knew. Lena wasn't exactly outgoing. She kept to herself, staying away from social events, and avoided situations where she might be forced into uncomfortable conversations. The thought of having someone else, even a professional, look at her so intimately made her stomach turn. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "You can do this," she whispered to herself as she walked through the hospital doors. She had done her research. The hospital was well known for its medical expertise, and the surgeon assigned to her case was highly recommended. But there was still something unsettling about it all. She had never met Dr. Ethan Carter before, and yet today, he would be the one to guide her through this experience. As she walked down the pristine white hallway, Lena's mind kept racing. What would he be like? Would he be kind, understanding, or would he be distant, focused solely on the technicalities of the procedure? She had heard the rumors. Dr. Ethan Carter was a brilliant surgeon, but he was also known to be somewhat aloof. His reputation preceded him, but it wasn't the kind of reputation she was familiar with. Ethan was young, successful, and had a charisma that seemed to attract attention wherever he went. As she approached the door to the surgical wing, she saw a nurse exit with a clipboard in hand. "Miss Lena?" the nurse asked with a smile. Lena nodded nervously, following the nurse into the room. There, she was introduced to Dr. Ethan Carter. He was taller than she expected, with sharp features and dark, intense eyes that seemed to look right through her. He gave her a brief but reassuring smile. "Miss Lena, I'm Dr. Ethan Carter. I'll be performing your surgery today. I know you must be feeling a bit nervous, but I'll make sure you're well taken care of." His voice was smooth, confident, but there was an underlying warmth that caught her off guard. "Thank you," Lena managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt a wave of uncertainty rush over her, but there was something about his calm demeanor that made her feel a little more at ease. As the nurse prepped her for the procedure, Lena couldn't help but notice the way Ethan moved around the room. He was so focused, so precise, as if he was completely in control of the situation. It was clear that he knew what he was doing, but there was something else about him, something that didn't fit the image of a typical surgeon. Ethan was not just any doctor. He was a millionaire, a young billionaire, to be exact. He came from a wealthy family, and though he worked hard for his success, it was known that his wealth allowed him to live a life of luxury. Yet, he chose to work in this hospital, in this environment, helping people like Lena. It didn't make sense. Why would someone with so much money and power choose this path? It wasn't just the surgery that was on Lena's mind anymore. It was the mystery of Dr. Ethan Carter, the young millionaire who had made a name for himself not only as a doctor, but as a figure of intrigue. Was it possible that someone like him, with everything he could want, was genuinely doing this for the right reasons? Or was there something else at play? As the nurse adjusted the sterile sheets around her, Lena's thoughts were interrupted. She felt a gentle tap on her arm. "You'll be fine, Miss Lena. We're about to begin." Ethan's voice was smooth again, as he gave her a nod before turning to the nurse to finalize the preparations. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that this was the start of something, much more than just a routine surgery. Little did she know, this would be the first of many surprises that would turn her world upside down. What kind of future awaited her with this young, enigmatic millionaire doctor? And what secrets would unfold as they navigated the delicate path between patient and doctor? Only time would tell. As Lena lay there on the operating table, she could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The sterile lights above flickered slightly, casting a cold, clinical glow over the room. Her mind raced with thoughts of the procedure ahead. She had never been the type of person to put herself in the spotlight, let alone undergo such an intimate and vulnerable experience. But there she was, about to trust a man she barely knew, Dr. Ethan Carter, the young, enigmatic doctor who had already begun to make her question everything she thought she knew about herself. Ethan moved with confidence around the room, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm of emotions brewing inside her. He was efficient, methodical, his every movement deliberate as he prepared for the surgery. It was clear he was a professional, one who had performed countless procedures just like this one. But Lena couldn't help but wonder what made him different. Why did someone with so much wealth and success choose this path? She had heard about his background, how he came from a powerful family, how he had inherited a fortune at a young age. But he chose to work here, in this hospital, in this environment. He could have lived a life of luxury, traveled the world, and never had to worry about money again. Yet, here he was, working tirelessly to help people like her. Could it really be as simple as his passion for medicine? Or was there more to his story? As she lay there, trying to calm her racing thoughts, Ethan turned to her, his gaze softening as he caught her eye. "Lena, I know this must be difficult for you," he said, his voice steady yet comforting. "I want you to know that you are in good hands. We're going to take great care of you." His words were reassuring, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to him, something beneath the surface that she couldn't quite put her finger on. She nodded weakly, unable to find her voice. It was as if the room was spinning around her, the reality of the situation settling in like a heavy weight on her chest. She tried to focus on his words, to find comfort in them, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the man in front of her. Ethan was everything she had never expected in a doctor. He wasn't cold and distant like the others she had encountered in the past. He didn't treat her as just another patient, another case to check off. There was something genuine in the way he spoke to her, a warmth in his eyes that made her feel like more than just a number in a medical chart. For a moment, she allowed herself to let her guard down, to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was someone she could trust. But the moment quickly passed, and her nerves returned. As the nurse continued to prep her, Lena couldn't help but steal a glance at Ethan. He was standing by the surgical instruments, his back to her as he organized everything with meticulous care. She couldn't help but notice the way his posture was so assured, the way his every movement seemed calculated, like he was in control of everything around him. She had never been good at trusting people, let alone a man who seemed so out of reach. But there was something about him, something that made her question all the walls she had built around herself. Did he really care, or was this just another job to him? As the minutes ticked by, Lena felt the anxiety creeping up again. What if she wasn't ready for this? What if something went wrong? She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. But she knew she couldn't turn back now. She had made the decision, and now it was time to face the consequences. Ethan turned back toward her, his expression unreadable. "Are you ready?" he asked. His voice was soft, but there was a firmness to it that made her feel like she had no other choice but to say yes. She nodded, though her heart was racing. "I'm ready," she whispered, barely able to hear her own voice. Ethan smiled gently and gave her a reassuring nod. "Good. We'll get started now." As the nurse adjusted the sterile sheets around her and the anesthesia began to take effect, Lena's mind began to drift. She felt herself slipping into a state of semi-consciousness, her body growing heavy and relaxed. Her last thought before the world went dark was of Ethan. There was something about him, something that made her want to trust him, despite everything she had been taught to fear. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. As Lena slowly drifted into unconsciousness, Ethan stood by her side, watching her closely. He could see the fear in her eyes, the uncertainty that had plagued her from the moment they had met. But there was something else there too, something more than just fear. There was trust, however small, and Ethan knew that it was something he had to protect at all costs. The surgery went smoothly, but what came after would be far more complicated. As Lena began to wake up, the soft beeping of the heart monitor slowly brought her back to consciousness. She could feel the weight of her body, the gentle pressure of the sheets, and the warmth of the room surrounding her. The first thing she saw when her eyes fluttered open was Ethan's face, his expression soft and kind as he looked down at her. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice low and gentle. Lena blinked, trying to focus. I'm okay," she whispered, still groggy from the anesthesia. Ethan nodded, clearly relieved. Good. You're going to be just fine. As she looked up at him, Lena couldn't help but wonder. Was this the beginning of something more? Was she really ready to let herself trust someone like Ethan? Or was this just another fleeting moment in her life? One that would fade into the past as quickly as it had come? I felt the soft hum of the machines around me before I fully regained consciousness. The quiet beep of the heart monitor was oddly comforting, almost like a steady reminder that everything was going to be all right. Slowly, my vision started to clear, and I could make out the familiar sterile white walls of the hospital room. But what stood out most was the presence of Dr. Ethan Carter standing at my bedside, his eyes focused on me as if he had been waiting for me to wake up. I blinked a few times, trying to shake off the grogginess of the anesthesia that still lingered in my system. Lena. Ethan's voice was soft, but there was an undeniable edge of concern in it. How are you feeling? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, my lips cracked. I croaked out, I'm okay. Ethan smiled, a small but reassuring smile, before gently adjusting my pillow and making sure I was as comfortable as possible. You're doing great. The surgery went well, and you should be up and about in no time. The words were meant to reassure me, but my mind couldn't help but wander back to everything I had learned about him. Ethan Carter, the millionaire doctor, the man who had everything, yet chose to be here, in this hospital, helping people like me. It didn't make sense. How did someone with so much wealth and privilege end up dedicating their life to medicine? I had heard rumors, whispers of his background, how he came from a wealthy family, how he didn't have to work at all. But he did. Why? I had to admit, I didn't understand it, but I couldn't help but feel drawn to him. There was something so genuine about the way he spoke to me, the way he treated me like more than just another patient. I didn't know how to explain it, but I felt like I could trust him. Maybe it was because he didn't treat me like a charity case, or because he genuinely seemed to care. Whatever it was, I didn't want to lose it. As I began to regain more of my bearings, I felt a flutter of nerves stir in my stomach. It wasn't just the surgery that had me anxious anymore. It was Ethan. It was everything I didn't understand about him. The more time I spent in his presence, the more questions I had. Why was he here? Why was he interested in me? Did he see me just as a patient, or was there something else? And more importantly, was I ready to face whatever that something else might be? I had been the kind of person who kept her distance from people, especially men. I was shy, introverted, always afraid of being judged or rejected. But with Ethan, it was different. It wasn't just his status as a doctor that set him apart. It was the way he made me feel like I mattered. He wasn't just another wealthy person who saw me as a means to an end. No, Ethan was different. And that difference made me question everything I had ever known about myself. You seem a little more awake, Ethan said, his voice breaking my thoughts. He was standing beside my bed now, a small tablet in his hand as he reviewed my vitals. How's the pain? Any discomfort? I paused, checking in with my body. No, not really. Just a little sore. I replied, my voice still weak but steadier. Ethan nodded, satisfied with my response. Good. That's normal. Just take it easy, okay? We'll get you up and moving when you're ready. But for now, rest is the most important thing. He reached over to adjust the blankets around me, and for a brief moment, his hand brushed against mine. It was a fleeting touch, but it sent a strange jolt of warmth through my body. I pulled my hand back, embarrassed by how easily his touch had affected me. I quickly turned my gaze toward the window, focusing on the view outside to distract myself. But it didn't work. The warmth from his touch lingered, a constant reminder of how confusing everything felt. Lena. Ethan's voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if he was considering his next words carefully. I know this isn't easy, but I want you to know that you're in good hands. You don't have to go through this alone. I turned back to look at him, meeting his gaze. For a moment, there was something more in his eyes than just the calm professionalism of a doctor. There was a hint of something personal, something vulnerable. It was as if he, too, was holding something back. I felt a pang of empathy for him, but at the same time, a part of me wanted to pull away. I wasn't used to trusting people so easily. And yet, here I was, feeling this unexplainable connection to a man who seemed to have everything. Ethan smiled again, but this time it was different. It was softer, warmer, and it made my heart skip a beat. I know it's not easy to trust someone, especially in a situation like this. But I promise you, I'm here for you. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I nodded, unsure of what to say. My heart was racing now, my emotions all tangled up. I didn't know what I was feeling, but I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him. I had always kept my distance from people, but Ethan made me want to let down my walls, to open up in a way I never thought possible. Was it too soon? Was I just being naive? These were the questions that ran through my mind as Ethan continued to check on me. But no matter how much I tried to fight it, I couldn't ignore the fact that I felt something real, something deep for the man who was standing beside me. The next few days in the hospital were a blur of rest, recovery, and fleeting conversations with Ethan. He was always professional, always caring, but there was a quiet intensity in his presence that I couldn't shake. I couldn't figure out if he was genuinely interested in me, or if I was just another case to him. The more I saw of him, the more I wondered. One evening, after the nurses had left for the night and the room had grown quiet, I found myself alone with my thoughts. That was when Ethan came in, as usual, to check on me before heading home for the night. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, his voice gentle but concerned. I looked up at him, searching his eyes for any sign of what he was really thinking. "I'm okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for everything." Ethan smiled, a small but genuine smile that made my heart flutter. "You're welcome. I'll check in on you again tomorrow. Get some rest." He turned to leave, but before he could step out the door, he paused and looked back at me. "Lena," he said, his voice soft. "I know you're going through a lot right now, but I want you to know that I'm here. I won't let you go through this alone." The words hung in the air, and I felt a warmth spread through me. It was the first time in my life that I truly believed someone when they said they would be there for me. And just like that, I knew. Ethan wasn't just my doctor. He was someone I could trust. And somehow, I knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than either of us could have ever anticipated. I spent the next few days recovering in the hospital, each passing moment giving me more time to reflect on everything that had happened. Ethan was always there, checking in on me, making sure I was comfortable, offering small, reassuring smiles that somehow made me feel safe despite all the uncertainty I had felt before. His presence had become a constant in my life, and I couldn't deny that my feelings for him were growing stronger by the day. What started as an almost clinical relationship had evolved into something deeper, something more personal. I didn't know what to make of it yet, but every time Ethan walked into the room, my heart would skip a beat. The way he spoke to me, the way his eyes lingered just a little longer than necessary, it all left me wondering if there was more to him than just a kind doctor. Was he interested in me? Or was I just another patient in a long line of cases he'd dealt with? I tried to push these thoughts aside as I focused on my recovery. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about him. One morning, as I was sitting up in bed, flipping through a magazine, Ethan walked in, his usual confident stride filling the room. "How are you feeling today, Lena?" he asked, his voice smooth and calm. I couldn't help but smile at the sound of his voice. "Better, I think," I replied, setting the magazine aside. "The pain's almost gone." Ethan nodded approvingly. "That's great to hear. You're healing faster than expected." He stood by my bedside for a moment, his gaze flickering over my chart. There was something about the way he looked at me, like he was studying me, seeing beyond the surface. It made me feel vulnerable, but in a way that was strangely comforting. "I know you've been through a lot," he said, his tone softer now. "And I want you to know that I'm here for you, if you ever need to talk or ask anything." The sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. "I appreciate that, Ethan. You've been so kind," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a quiet connection that I couldn't fully explain. It was more than just gratitude for him being my doctor. It was something deeper, something I was beginning to fear might be more complicated than I was ready for. Ethan broke the silence, stepping closer. "I know it's not easy, Lena, but I promise you, you're not alone in this." His words lingered in the air, and for a brief moment, I wondered if he meant more than just his role as my doctor. Was he really offering me more? Before I could ask, there was a knock on the door, and the nurse entered, breaking the moment. Ethan stepped back, giving me a smile before turning to leave. "I'll check in on you later," he said, his voice still soft, but now there was an edge to it, like he was holding something back. I nodded, trying to shake the thoughts that had started to fill my mind. I couldn't let myself get caught up in whatever was happening between us. He was my doctor. That was all. But as the nurse began to check my vitals, I couldn't stop myself from thinking about Ethan. The way he had looked at me, the way he cared for me, it felt different from anything I had ever experienced. It was more than just professional kindness. It felt personal. Days passed, and with each one, I found myself growing more attached to Ethan. But the more I thought about him, the more complicated everything became. What would this mean for me? For him? He was a successful, wealthy man, someone who could have anyone he wanted. And then there was me, shy, reserved, with nothing to offer but my gratitude. I couldn't help but feel like I was out of my depth. As I recovered, I spent more time thinking about my life, my future, and where I was headed. The hospital room, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become a place of reflection. I knew that I couldn't stay here forever. I would have to return to my life, face the world outside these walls. But would Ethan still be a part of it? Or was this just a temporary connection, one that would fade once I was well enough to leave? The thought filled me with a strange sense of loss. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky outside my window turned a deep shade of orange, I was once again alone in my room, thinking. Ethan had checked on me earlier, his usual reassuring presence lingering in the air even after he left. I could still hear his voice in my head, still feel the weight of his words. The door to my room opened again, and there he was. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking as composed as ever, but this time, there was something different about his expression. He wasn't wearing his usual professional mask. His eyes softened when he saw me, and for a moment, I felt like I was the only person in the room. "Lena," he said, his voice low and almost hesitant. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something." My heart skipped a beat. Was this the moment? The moment I had been waiting for. The one where he would finally admit what I had been hoping for? That he felt the same way about me? But no, Ethan wasn't the type to be swayed by impulse. He was always in control. I could see that now. So I waited, trying to calm the wild thoughts running through my mind. "What is it?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anticipation in my chest. Ethan took a deep breath, his expression serious now. "I just want you to know that what's happening between us, it's not just about the surgery. I care about you, Lena, more than I should. And I can't just let this pass without telling you." His words hit me like a wave, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Could it be true? Was this really happening? "Ethan," I whispered, my heart racing. I don't know what to say. But before I could say anything else, he took a step forward, his hand reaching out as if to comfort me. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know that I'm here for you. No matter what happens, I'm here." And just like that, I felt it. The truth of his words, the sincerity in his actions. Ethan wasn't just my doctor. He was something much more. And the journey we were about to embark on together was only just beginning. I woke up the next morning to the sound of the soft beeping from the heart monitor, a constant, reassuring rhythm that filled the otherwise silent room. My body felt sore, but it was a good kind of sore, the kind that signified healing. I glanced at the clock on the wall, seeing that it was still early, the golden light of dawn barely creeping through the hospital blinds. As I lay there, I felt a deep sense of peace. It was strange. Just a few days ago, this place had filled me with so much anxiety. Now, it was almost like a sanctuary. I wasn't sure if it was the surgery itself or the strange comfort I found in Ethan's presence, but something had shifted inside me. The overwhelming fear and uncertainty I had felt about this procedure and about him were slowly fading, replaced by something I wasn't ready to admit to myself, something that felt very much like trust. The door to my room opened, and I turned my head, my heart skipping a beat when I saw Ethan step in. He was dressed in his usual professional attire, but today, there was something different about him. His usual calm, composed expression seemed a little softer, as if he had something on his mind. "Good morning, Lena," he said, his voice low and warm, as he approached my bed. "How are you feeling today?" I smiled faintly, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in my stomach. "Better. Much better. The pain has really eased up." Ethan nodded, clearly relieved. "That's great to hear. We'll give you a few more days to fully recover, but everything seems to be going smoothly." His eyes met mine, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside the hospital room disappeared. "I've been thinking," Ethan continued, his voice trailing off slightly, "about what I said the other night. I felt my heart rate quicken. Was he about to say something more? Something important? The silence between us felt heavy, charged with something unspoken. Ethan, I started, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say, but he interrupted me gently, taking a step closer to the bed. You don't have to say anything right now, Lena. I just wanted to make sure that you know what I meant. I care about you. I've been trying to ignore it, to pretend like it's just the doctor-patient relationship, but I can't. You're more than just a patient to me. My breath caught in my throat. Was this really happening? Was he really saying these things? I couldn't believe it, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the way my heart raced whenever he was near. The way his words made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just another case to him. I wanted to believe him, but a part of me was still scared. Scared of what this meant, scared of what would happen next. I don't know what to do with all these feelings. I confessed, my voice trembling slightly. Ethan's gaze softened, and he took a slow, measured breath. Neither do I, he admitted, but I'm not going to hide it anymore. I don't want to pretend that this is just professional anymore. I care about you, Lena, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. His words hung in the air, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. Could I trust him? Could I allow myself to feel something for him, knowing how complicated it would be? I had never been good at trusting people, never been good at letting anyone get close. But with Ethan, it felt different. It felt like he was someone I could trust, someone who would be there for me no matter what. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, I said, my voice low. I've never been in a relationship like this before. And you're not just anyone. I know, he interrupted gently. I know who I am, and I know how complicated this could be. But I'm willing to take that risk. Are you? I looked up at him, meeting his gaze. There was no doubt in my mind that Ethan was serious. He wasn't asking me to jump into something I wasn't ready for. He was just asking for a chance for us to see where this could go. And that scared me more than anything. I had spent so many years building walls around myself, keeping everyone at arm's length. But Ethan, with his quiet confidence and his kindness, was slowly breaking down those walls. I don't know what this will mean, I said softly, but I want to try. I want to see where this could go too. Ethan's face lit up with a smile that was so genuine, so full of relief that it made my chest tighten. You don't have to rush anything. We can take this as slow as you need. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I nodded, feeling a sense of comfort wash over me. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something I hadn't expected but was willing to embrace. Thank you, Ethan, I whispered. For everything. No need to thank me, he replied, his voice soft. This is just the beginning. As the days went by, the hospital became a place where I not only healed physically but emotionally as well. Ethan continued to check in on me daily, offering support, but also giving me the space I needed to process everything. We spent more time together, talking about things beyond the surgery, our pasts, our dreams, and what we both wanted for the future. The connection between us deepened with each passing day, and though I still had my fears and uncertainties, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real. Something that wasn't just about the doctor-patient dynamic. Something that could turn into a love I had never thought I deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that I could have that love. I could have Ethan. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized that I didn't want to let him go. But the question still lingered. Could we navigate the complexities of our lives, our differences, and make this work? Only time would tell. I spent the next few days adjusting to the new reality of being in Ethan's presence. It felt like everything had changed overnight. No longer was I just a patient recovering from surgery. There was something deeper between us, something neither of us had fully acknowledged. But I could feel it growing every time Ethan walked into the room. His smile, the warmth in his eyes, it was all becoming undeniable. Still, I couldn't ignore the nagging fear in the back of my mind. What did this mean? Was this a fleeting connection, or was it something that could turn into something more? I hadn't been in a relationship in years. The walls I had built around myself for so long were coming down, piece by piece, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. As the days went by, I found myself more comfortable with Ethan. He wasn't just my doctor anymore. We started talking about more personal things, our childhoods, our dreams, and our hopes for the future. He was opening up to me in a way I hadn't expected, and it made me feel closer to him. The more we talked, the more I began to see him for who he truly was, not just a brilliant doctor or a wealthy man, but someone who had his own vulnerabilities. It made him feel more real to me, less like the mysterious figure I had once thought him to be. One afternoon, after a particularly long shift, Ethan stayed behind to check on me. The hospital room had grown quiet, the only sound being the faint hum of the machines around me. "How are you feeling today?" he asked as he sat beside me, his usual calm demeanor still present, but there was a hint of concern in his voice. "I'm doing okay," I replied, my voice soft. I had been feeling a bit more tired lately, but it wasn't anything I couldn't handle. Still a little sore, but nothing too bad. Ethan nodded, his eyes scanning my face for any signs of discomfort. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to let me know," he said, his hand briefly brushing mine in a comforting gesture. I felt a rush of warmth at the simple touch, and my heart fluttered. It was small, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it meant everything to me. "Thank you, Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've been so kind to me." He looked at me, his eyes intense but gentle. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing my job," he said, though I could see the sincerity in his words. There was something more in the way he looked at me, something that went beyond professionalism. I didn't know if it was the connection we shared or if it was something more, but I could feel myself being drawn closer to him. That night, after the nurses had finished their rounds and the lights in the hallways dimmed, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I couldn't sleep, the quiet of the room too loud with my racing thoughts. My mind kept returning to Ethan, his kindness, his attention, the way he made me feel. Like I mattered. I couldn't deny that I was starting to feel something for him, something deeper than just admiration or gratitude. But there was still that voice in the back of my mind telling me to be careful. He was wealthy, successful, and had everything anyone could want. What did someone like him see in someone like me? Was this just a momentary connection for him, something to pass the time while I recovered? Or did he truly care about me? The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. The next day, I decided to push those thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to dwell on them. I was still recovering, and I had to focus on getting better. Ethan was right. I was here for a reason, and that reason was to heal. But as I looked up and saw him standing in the doorway, a small smile tugged at my lips. He had become a constant in my life, and somehow, I felt better just knowing he was there. "Hey, how's my favorite patient doing today?" Ethan said, his usual playful tone lightening the mood. "Still surviving," I replied with a grin, the familiar banter easing some of the tension that had built up inside me. Ethan took a step into the room, checking the chart on the foot of my bed. "Good to hear. I've got some good news for you. We're going to start physical therapy tomorrow, just some light exercises to get your muscles back in shape. Nothing too intense, but it should help with your recovery." I nodded, relieved. "That sounds good. I think I'm ready." Ethan smiled, clearly pleased. "That's the spirit." He paused for a moment. Then his expression softened. "Lena, I wanted to talk to you about something." My heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment I had been anticipating and dreading at the same time. Was he about to say what I thought he was going to say? I sat up straighter, trying to prepare myself. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know things have been moving pretty fast between us, and I don't want you to feel pressured, but I think it's important that you know how I feel." My breath caught in my throat. I could barely find the words to respond. Was I ready for this? Could I handle it? Ethan continued, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "I care about you, Lena, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. I know we're both in uncharted territory here, but I don't want to ignore what's happening between us." The air in the room felt thick with emotion, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. My heart was racing, and every word seemed to hang in the balance. "I care about you too, Ethan," I finally whispered, my voice barely audible. The tension between us seemed to dissipate in an instant, replaced by something else, something warm, something real. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'm glad to hear that," he said softly. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe this, whatever this was worth taking a chance on. We didn't have all the answers, and we certainly didn't have it all figured out, but for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page. That was enough for me. As Ethan walked out of the room that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something bigger than either of us could have imagined. I had been awake for several days now, the light of the world outside my hospital room growing brighter with each passing moment. Recovery had become a routine, a comfortable rhythm, with small milestones marking my progress. Ethan continued to check in daily, always with a smile, always with that calming presence that seemed to make everything better. I could tell, though, that something was different in the air between us. It wasn't just the doctor-patient dynamic anymore. It was more than that, and I knew it, even though neither of us had explicitly said it. Ethan had been careful with his words, giving me the space I needed to come to terms with what was happening between us. But as the days passed, I realized I could no longer ignore the pull between us. My feelings for him were undeniable. They had grown from admiration to something deeper, something I couldn't easily explain. But I was scared. Scared of what it meant. Scared of what it could turn into. It wasn't just that Ethan was a successful and wealthy man, someone who could have anyone he wanted. It was the fact that I had never been someone to let anyone get too close. But he was different. I was beginning to believe that maybe I could let myself trust him. The fear was still there, but it was becoming more of a quiet hum in the back of my mind, something I could push aside for a while. That morning, I was feeling more restless than usual. I had spent the entire morning with the nurse going through the basic recovery exercises, trying to regain strength in my legs and arms. It wasn't too intense yet, just small movements, but it felt good to be doing something, anything, after days of lying in bed. As I sat there, catching my breath, the door to my room opened, and Ethan stepped in. He was in his usual professional attire, but today there was something different in the way he looked at me. His gaze lingered a moment longer than usual, and I felt my heart race just a little. "How's my favorite patient doing today?" he asked with that familiar smile, his eyes lighting up at the sight of me. "Favorite patient, huh?" I teased, raising an eyebrow. "I think I'm probably the only patient you've seen today." Ethan chuckled, but there was a hint of something else in his smile. "You're definitely the most important one," he replied, his voice sincere. The way he said it, with such genuine care, made my heart flutter. "I'm doing okay," I replied, smiling back at him. "I'm still a bit sore, but the exercises help. I think I'll be walking on my own again soon." Ethan nodded, clearly relieved to hear that. "That's good to hear. We'll take it one step at a time, all right? No need to rush it. Your body needs time to heal properly." His words were comforting, but there was something more in the way he spoke to me. His tone was soft, caring, and there was an unmistakable warmth in his eyes. I felt a wave of emotions rush through me, and I couldn't quite place them. It was a mixture of gratitude, uncertainty, and something else. Something deeper. "Thank you, Ethan," I said, my voice quiet but full of meaning. "You've been so patient with me, and I really appreciate it." He smiled, his eyes softening. "It's my pleasure, Lena. You've been doing great. You don't need to thank me. I'm just here to help." But there was something in the way he looked at me that told me he meant more than just that. It wasn't just about me being his patient. It was about us, the connection we were building. "I know," I replied, my voice just above a whisper. "But I can't help it. I feel like I'm finally starting to let go of all the walls I've built around myself." Ethan stepped closer, his hand gently resting on the edge of my bed, just a few inches from mine. "I'm glad to hear that," he said softly. "I know it's not easy, Lena, but you're doing great. And I want you to know, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His words were simple, yet they carried so much weight. It was like he was reassuring me that I wasn't alone in this. But I still had questions. So many questions. And I didn't know how to ask them, didn't know if I was ready to hear the answers. Was this really happening? Was it possible for someone like him, someone with so much to offer, to care about someone like me? I hadn't allowed myself to be vulnerable in so long. I hadn't trusted anyone enough to let them in. But with Ethan, everything felt different. "Ethan," I began, my voice faltering slightly. "I don't know what to do with all of this. All these feelings, all this connection. I've never been in a relationship like this before, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it." Ethan didn't pull away. He didn't hesitate. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Lena, I get it," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "I'm not asking for you to have all the answers right now. I just want you to know that I care. And I'm willing to take things at your pace, whenever you're ready. No pressure." There was something in his words, in his tone, that made me believe him. I could feel the sincerity in every syllable, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could trust him. I don't want to rush into anything, I said, my voice steadier now. But I don't want to shut you out either. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that warmed my heart. We don't have to rush anything. We have time. We can take it one step at a time. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone in this. Maybe I didn't have to do it all by myself. Ethan was here, and I wasn't sure where this would go, but I was willing to find out. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of quiet conversation and small moments of connection. As the day turned to night and the soft glow of the moonlight filled the room, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, I was okay with that. I was ready to let things unfold naturally, to take one step at a time, with Ethan by my side. I woke up the next morning feeling better than I had in days. The soreness was still there, but it wasn't as intense. The pain had become more of a dull ache, something manageable. I stretched slightly, testing my limits, and was pleased to find that I was able to sit up without the usual discomfort. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. The last few days had been a whirlwind of recovery and emotional turmoil. The moments with Ethan had made me question everything I thought I knew about myself, about what I wanted, and whether I was ready for something real. But now, with the sun shining through the hospital windows, I felt more grounded, more at peace. Ethan had been right all along. There was no need to rush anything. We could take it slow. And that's what I was trying to do, take things one day at a time. As I began to adjust the pillow behind me, the door to my room opened. I looked up to find Ethan standing there, his familiar smile lighting up his face. "Good morning, Lena," he said, his voice warm and soothing. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," I replied with a genuine smile. "I think I'm finally starting to get the hang of this recovery thing." Ethan walked into the room, his eyes immediately scanning my condition. "That's great to hear. I think you're healing faster than expected. It's good to see you in such high spirits." He reached for the chart at the foot of my bed, quickly reviewing it before turning back to me. "The physical therapy is going well, right? No discomfort or anything?" I nodded, not wanting to downplay my progress. "No discomfort. Just a little tired, but that's to be expected." Ethan gave a nod of approval, but there was a look in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. It wasn't just concern, it was something else, something deeper. "I'm glad to hear that. You've been doing great, Lena. You've been a model patient," he said with a soft chuckle. "And, of course, a pleasure to work with." His words made my chest tighten. The sincerity in his voice, the way he looked at me, made it hard to ignore the feelings I had been pushing aside. But it was also terrifying. Ethan was so different from anyone I had known, and I had no idea what he wanted from me. Was this really happening? Or was I just projecting my own desires onto him? "Thank you, Ethan," I said quietly, my voice filled with gratitude. "You've been so patient with me. I don't know what I would have done without you." Ethan paused for a moment, his gaze softening as he looked at me. "You don't have to thank me, Lena," he said, stepping closer. "I care about you, and I just want you to get better. I'm here to help you, no matter what." The weight of his words settled heavily in my chest. I had never had someone care for me like this. Not in the way Ethan did. The way he looked at me, as if I mattered to him, was something I hadn't experienced before. It made everything inside me feel raw and exposed. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "I don't know how to do this. How do I let myself trust you?" Ethan didn't hesitate. He moved closer, sitting on the edge of my bed. "You don't have to do anything, Lena. You don't have to trust me overnight. Just take your time. We can go at your pace. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the long haul." His words were like a balm to the insecurities I had been battling. He wasn't asking for something from me that I wasn't ready to give. He was simply offering his support, his care, and that was enough for now. I felt a deep sense of relief wash over me. I didn't have to have all the answers. I just had to be honest with myself and with Ethan about what I needed. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared, Ethan. I've never been in a relationship where I could really be myself." Ethan reached out, gently placing his hand on top of mine. "I understand," he said softly. "I'm not asking for you to be someone you're not. I'm asking for you to be real with me, to take things one step at a time. I'll be here when you're ready." The way he said it, so calm, so patient, made me feel like maybe this wasn't so scary after all. Maybe I didn't have to have everything figured out right now. Maybe I could let things unfold naturally. I could feel myself relaxing into his touch, feeling the warmth of his hand on mine. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel. I let myself be vulnerable. Okay, I whispered. I'll try. I'll take it slow. I just need time. Ethan's smile grew, a genuine, reassuring smile that melted some of the fear I had been holding on to. That's all I'm asking for, Lena. We'll take it slow together. In that moment, something shifted. It wasn't some grand revelation, but a quiet understanding between us. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I felt like I could face it. With Ethan by my side, I didn't have to be afraid. I didn't have to carry the weight of my fears alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. We sat in silence for a while, just enjoying the quiet, the steady beat of the heart monitor, and the soft sound of Ethan's breath. It wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. That evening, as the sun began to set and the lights in my room dimmed, I felt a calmness that I hadn't known I was capable of. The world outside seemed far away, and for once, I wasn't worried about the future. I was focused on the present, on the moment I was sharing with Ethan. It wasn't perfect, and there were still so many questions, but I knew one thing. I wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. I spent the next few days trying to process everything that had happened. Things between Ethan and I were undeniably shifting, but I wasn't sure where it was heading. We had started off with a doctor-patient relationship, and while I had trusted him as my physician, now it felt like something more, something deeper, something I wasn't ready to completely admit yet. Every time I saw Ethan, the world felt smaller, and for once, I allowed myself to imagine a life outside the sterile walls of the hospital. But there was still uncertainty. I knew I wasn't ready for a relationship, not fully. I hadn't been in one in so long, and the idea of letting someone in, especially someone like Ethan, who had so much of his life together, felt intimidating. Still, there was a part of me that couldn't ignore the pull between us. Every glance, every word, every moment we spent together had been building something I couldn't deny. It was late one afternoon when things finally came to a head. Ethan had stayed after his shift to check on me, as he had done many times before. It was something I had come to expect, and strangely, something I had come to rely on. But today felt different. He was quieter than usual, his gaze softer, like he was waiting for something. I sat up in bed, adjusting the pillows behind me, trying to figure out what he was thinking. He was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline, his back to me. He had been unusually distant lately, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was because of me. Ethan, I called softly, breaking the silence. He turned around, his eyes meeting mine, but there was something more serious in them than I had seen before. Hey, he said quietly, a small smile tugging at his lips, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. How are you feeling? I'm fine, I replied, a bit more nervously than I intended. But you seem different today. Ethan took a deep breath, his hands clasped behind his back. He was still standing near the window, his gaze now directed at the floor. Lena, he began, his voice low and a little hesitant. I need to be honest with you. I could feel my heart start to race, the fear of the unknown creeping up inside me. What was he going to say? Was this about us? Was it too much, too soon? What is it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ethan met my eyes again, and there was a deep vulnerability there. I've been thinking a lot about us, about what we're doing here, and I want to be clear with you about my feelings. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I had never been good at handling vulnerability, especially my own. But this was different. I couldn't look away from him, couldn't push back the growing ache in my chest. Ethan, he cut me off gently, shaking his head. I don't want to rush anything, and I don't want you to feel pressured. But I care about you, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. His words hung in the air, filling the room with a heavy silence. I could feel my heart pounding, the uncertainty of everything still lingering. He continued, walking toward the bed, his steps slow and deliberate. I know we've been taking it slow, and that's been good. But I think you deserve to know exactly where I stand. His gaze softened as he reached the side of my bed, his hand reaching out, almost instinctively, to brush a strand of hair from my face. I care about you, Lena. I've never been one to wear my heart on my sleeve. But with you, I can't help it. I was stunned into silence. The words were so simple, but they felt like a revelation. I had spent so much time being afraid of what was happening between us, afraid of how I felt and what it meant, and yet here he was, laying it all out for me. He wasn't afraid. He was just being honest. "Ethan," I whispered, feeling the tears start to well up in my eyes. "I don't know what to say." He smiled gently, his thumb brushing lightly over my hand. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know how I feel. We don't have to figure it all out at once. But I need you to know, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The tears that had been threatening to fall now slipped down my cheeks. I didn't even try to stop them. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel everything I had been holding back. The overwhelming fear, the uncertainty, and the deep relief that came with knowing that Ethan truly cared. I wiped my eyes quickly, trying to regain my composure. "I've never done this before," I admitted, my voice shaky. "Let someone in. Let myself trust someone. And now you're telling me all of this." Ethan leaned down, brushing his lips gently against my forehead. "I'm not asking you to change overnight, Lena. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not rushing you. We'll go at your pace. But I'm here, whenever you're ready." I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. I wasn't sure what the future held. I wasn't even sure what tomorrow would look like. But I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want to face it alone. I reached up, taking his hand in mine, holding it tight. "I'm ready to try," I whispered. The weight of the words settled in, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking a step in the right direction. Ethan smiled down at me, and I knew, in that moment, that whatever came next, we would face it together. The world outside the hospital window seemed distant, unimportant. All that mattered was here, in this room, with him by my side. I woke up the next morning with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. The night had been full of quiet reflection, and when I opened my eyes, I realized that everything had shifted. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Ethan had opened up to me, shared his feelings, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to be vulnerable in return. I knew we didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, that didn't seem to matter. What mattered was the honesty between us. The connection we had, the trust that had been slowly building, was real. And that, in itself, was something worth holding on to. As I sat up in bed, stretching slightly, I could feel the stiffness in my body from the days of recovery. But it wasn't overwhelming. The physical therapy had been helping, and I could already feel myself gaining strength. My thoughts wandered back to Ethan. It felt strange, thinking about him like this, but the truth was, I hadn't felt like this in a long time. The walls I had built around myself, the walls I had kept intact to avoid getting hurt, were slowly starting to crumble. I wasn't used to letting someone in, but with Ethan, it felt different. The door to my room creaked open, and there he was, Ethan, with his usual calm presence. He smiled when he saw me sitting up, his eyes lighting up in that way they always did when he saw me. It felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders just to see him. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm and comforting. "How are you feeling today?" I smiled back at him, feeling a bit more at ease than I had in the past few weeks. "Better. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this recovery thing." Ethan stepped into the room, his gaze scanning me quickly before he nodded, clearly relieved. "That's great to hear. I've got some good news for you." I raised an eyebrow, curious. "What kind of good news?" "Well," he said, leaning against the doorframe, "you've been making such great progress that I think we can move up the timeline for your physical therapy. I'll be working with you more closely over the next few days." I felt a surge of excitement. "Really?" I asked, almost surprised. "That's amazing." Ethan's smile deepened. "You've been putting in the work, Lena. I knew you had it in you. But more than that, I think it'll help you feel a little more like yourself again." His words meant more to me than I realized. I hadn't expected to hear that kind of support, especially from someone like him. Ethan was someone who had seen success and failure, who had built a life of his own, and to have him acknowledge my efforts felt like a win. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he believed in me. I had never really believed in myself like that. "Thank you," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "I didn't think I could do it, but now I think maybe I can." Ethan's gaze softened as he crossed the room to sit beside me on the edge of the bed. "Of course you can," he said, his voice steady. "I'm proud of you, Lena. You've come a long way, and this is just the beginning." I felt a rush of emotions. Pride, gratitude, and something else that I couldn't quite place, something deeper, something I was still trying to understand. As he sat there, So close, I couldn't ignore the warmth between us. It wasn't just his kindness that made me feel safe. It was the quiet connection we had. The more we spent time together, the more I realized I didn't want to lose this, whatever this was. Ethan, I began, my voice a little uncertain. I've been thinking about everything. About us. Ethan's eyes searched mine, a hint of curiosity in them. What about us? He asked, his voice gentle. I swallowed, trying to find the words. I don't know if I'm ready for everything yet, I admitted, the truth slipping out before I could stop it. But I want to try. I want to see where this goes, but I need to take it slow. I'm just scared of getting hurt. Ethan reached out, placing his hand gently on mine. I get it, he said quietly. You don't have to rush, Lena. I'm not going anywhere. We'll go at your pace, whatever you're comfortable with. I care about you, and I'm not asking for anything more than that. His words felt like a promise, something I had longed to hear, but had never believed could be real. I squeezed his hand lightly, feeling my heart settle in a way it hadn't before. Maybe we didn't have all the answers, but we had each other. And for now, that was enough. The days passed in a blur of physical therapy, quiet moments with Ethan, and small breakthroughs in my recovery. It wasn't just the physical progress that kept me going, it was the emotional healing as well. Every time Ethan walked into the room, every time he smiled at me, I felt like I was becoming someone I hadn't known I could be. I was starting to believe in myself again, to trust in the future, to trust in him. One evening, after a long day of therapy, Ethan and I sat together in the small sitting area by the window. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the room, and for the first time in a while, I felt completely at ease. Ethan was sitting across from me, his eyes focused on the city outside, but I could see the quiet intensity in his expression. I couldn't help but ask, "What are you thinking about?" He turned to look at me, a soft smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Just about how much you've changed since you came here," he said, his voice thoughtful. "When you first arrived, you were so guarded, so unsure of everything. But now," he trailed off, and I felt my heart flutter. "Now, you're stronger than I've ever seen you." His words touched me deeply, more than I could express. I didn't know how to thank him for seeing me in a way I had never seen myself. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, my voice quiet but sincere. Ethan smiled, his eyes locking with mine. "You did it, Lena. I'm just here to help you along the way." In that moment, I realized that he was right. I had come this far on my own strength, and now, with Ethan by my side, I felt like I could face anything. The uncertainty that had once clouded my mind had cleared, and I was ready to face the future, no matter where it led. Together, we could take it one step at a time. I had spent the past few weeks learning more about myself than I ever expected. With each passing day, I was becoming more confident in my own abilities, both physically and emotionally. The physical therapy had been difficult at times, but with Ethan's help, I was making steady progress. I no longer felt like I was just recovering from surgery. I was evolving, growing stronger, and more aware of the person I was becoming. The connection I had with Ethan was undeniable, but we had agreed to take things slow, not rushing into anything. He respected my boundaries, and I appreciated that. Yet, there were moments that lingered in the air between us, that made me wonder how long I could keep this distance between us. Each time he smiled at me, each time he reached out in small, caring gestures, I felt my walls slowly crumbling. But I wasn't ready to acknowledge that yet. I wasn't sure if I could. A few days after our conversation, where Ethan had shared his feelings, I found myself standing at a crossroads. I had been avoiding facing the truth that I was falling for him. It had happened gradually, but it was undeniable. The more I spent time with Ethan, the more I realized how much I valued his presence in my life. I had always been independent, self-reliant, but now, with him by my side, I felt a different kind of strength, one that came from being vulnerable, from trusting someone else. That afternoon, after a particularly challenging physical therapy session, I sat by the window in my room, gazing out at the bustling city below. It was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. The weight of my emotions, of my feelings for Ethan, had been pushing against me for days, and I could finally breathe without the constant pressure. I didn't know what to do with the emotions swirling inside me, but I knew I had to confront them. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that it wasn't something I could figure out alone. Ethan had been so patient with me, giving me the space I needed, but I felt like I was running out of time to decide what I wanted. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine if I wasn't being honest with myself. Just then, I heard a knock on the door, and my heart skipped a beat. I knew it was Ethan before he even stepped inside. I hadn't seen him all morning, and I was starting to miss his presence. When he entered the room, his warm, comforting smile greeted me, and for a brief moment, the world outside seemed to fade away. "Hey, how's it going?" he asked, his voice soft and caring as he crossed the room toward me. I smiled, trying to hide the sudden wave of emotions that hit me. "Better. The therapy is helping, I think," I replied, my voice sounding lighter than I felt. Ethan nodded, clearly pleased with my progress. "You're doing great, Lena. I'm proud of you." His words meant a lot more than he probably realized. I was used to hearing praise from people, but the way Ethan said it, so sincerely, made me feel seen in a way I had never experienced before. But, as much as I appreciated his kindness, there was something inside me that I couldn't ignore. I needed to talk to him, to finally acknowledge the truth I had been avoiding. "Ethan," I began, my voice shaking slightly. "I need to talk to you about something." He looked at me, concern flickering in his eyes. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I've been thinking a lot lately about us. About what's happening between us. And I need to be honest with you." Ethan sat down beside me, his full attention on me now. "You know you can tell me anything, Lena. What's going on?" I paused for a moment, gathering my thoughts. "I think I'm falling for you," I said, the words feeling heavier than I expected. Ethan didn't say anything immediately. He just looked at me, as if processing what I had just said. I felt my heart race, the silence between us growing thick with unspoken words. I was waiting for him to react, for him to say something. Anything. But all I could do was watch him, feeling more vulnerable than I ever had before. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Lena," he said, his hand reaching out to gently touch mine. "I'm falling for you too." The relief I felt in that moment was overwhelming. It was like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted. His words, the truth in them, flooded me with a sense of peace. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other, and that was enough. "I don't know what this means yet," he continued, "but I know I want to find out. Together." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. But this time, they were tears of happiness. I didn't know where this would go, what challenges we would face, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone. "I want that too," I whispered, feeling a smile spread across my face. I need to trust myself first." Ethan smiled back at me, his hand still resting on mine. "Take all the time you need, Lena. I'm not going anywhere." The sincerity in his words, the promise that he would be there for me no matter what, was all I needed. For the first time, I felt like I was ready to take the next step. Together, we would navigate whatever came next. With Ethan by my side, I knew I wasn't just healing physically. I was learning to trust again, learning to love again. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. I sat quietly in my hospital room, the morning sunlight streaming in through the blinds, casting a warm glow over the space. I had come a long way since the first days of my recovery. The physical therapy was getting easier, the soreness in my muscles fading with each passing day. But more than just the physical healing, something else was happening. I was changing. I was starting to believe in myself again. And as much as that had to do with my body healing, it also had everything to do with Ethan. Since that moment we'd shared, where he had finally confessed his feelings for me, everything between us felt different, more real, more honest. He had been so patient, giving me the space I needed, but I knew now that I was ready. Ready to let go of the last bit of fear I had been holding on to. The trust one had in Ethan had grown, and the walls I had spent years building around myself had started to come down. But with that came a new challenge, allowing myself to fully embrace what was between us. We had agreed to take things slow, and I was okay with that. It wasn't about rushing into something just for the sake of it. It was about moving at a pace that felt right for both of us. But there were moments when I couldn't help but wonder, what did the future hold for us? I couldn't ignore the connection we shared, the bond that had grown so effortlessly between us. But would it be enough? Could a relationship built in a hospital room, surrounded by pain and recovery, really translate into something lasting? I wasn't sure. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. I had been lost in thought when the door to my room opened, and there he was, Ethan. He had that familiar smile on his face, the one that made my heart race, the one that had been the anchor in the storm of uncertainty. "Hey there, how's my favorite patient today?" he asked, his voice light and playful, but I could see the genuine concern in his eyes. "Feeling better," I said, returning his smile. "I think I'm finally starting to get the hang of all this." Ethan walked into the room and stood by my bedside, his gaze softening as he looked at me. "I'm proud of you, Lena," he said quietly. "You've made so much progress." I could feel the sincerity in his words, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride myself. He had been there for me every step of the way, and now I was starting to see the results. Not just physically, but emotionally as well. "Thanks," I said, my voice a little shaky, but full of gratitude. "It's because of you, though. You've been so patient with me." Ethan smiled, his eyes softening as he reached out and took my hand in his. The simple gesture sent a warmth through me, a reassurance that we were in this together. "I'm happy to be here for you, Lena. You don't have to thank me. I care about you, and I always will." Those words, they meant more to me than I could say. Ethan was not just my doctor anymore. He was becoming someone I cared deeply for, someone I wanted to be a part of my life, not just as a patient and a doctor, but as something more. I had fought against these feelings for so long, afraid of being hurt, afraid of opening up. But with Ethan, everything felt different. "I've been thinking about us," I said, my voice suddenly a little more serious. "About what this means, about what we want from this. I'm not sure I've ever let anyone in like this before." Ethan's gaze never wavered. "Lena, we don't have to have all the answers right now. What we have, what we're building together, is real. And I'm not going anywhere." His words, the certainty in his voice, made something inside me shift. I had been so caught up in the idea of needing to figure everything out, to have all the answers before moving forward. But maybe that wasn't what mattered. Maybe what mattered was that we were here, together, in this moment, and that was enough. "I don't know what the future holds, Ethan," I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. "But I want to find out with you. I don't want to let my fear control me anymore." Ethan squeezed my hand gently, his thumb brushing across the back of my hand in a comforting motion. "Then let's take this one day at a time. No pressure. Just us." The way he said those words, so simple and pure, filled me with a sense of calm. We didn't need to have everything figured out right now. What mattered was that we were willing to try, to trust each other, and to move forward together. As I looked up at him, I saw the same vulnerability in his eyes that I was feeling in my own heart. We were in this together, both of us learning, growing, and taking the first steps towards something new. "I want this, Ethan," I said, my voice steady now. "I want us." Ethan's smile was all I needed. "Then we'll make it work, Lena. We'll make it work, no matter what." The tension that had built up over the past few weeks seemed to melt away in that moment. I felt like I could breathe again, like the weight that had been on my chest for so long had finally lifted. Ethan and I were on the same page. We were ready to face whatever came next, together. The road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face them. I wasn't alone anymore. And that realization, that sense of security and trust, made all the difference. We didn't know exactly where this journey would take us, but with Ethan by my side, I knew we would navigate it, one step at a time. I woke up the next morning with a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in weeks. The morning light filtered in through the blinds, casting a warm, golden hue across the room. I stretched slightly, feeling the familiar tightness in my muscles, but no longer the sharp, intense pain I had felt when I first arrived. Physical therapy was paying off. I was recovering, not just physically but emotionally as well. It was hard to believe how far I had come from the scared, reserved person I had been when I first met Ethan. Our connection, the trust we had built, had made me realize how much I had been holding back. But now, I was ready to embrace the unknown. Ethan's presence in my life had changed everything. What had started as a doctor-patient relationship had blossomed into something more, a deep, personal connection. He had been patient, understanding, and kind, offering me the space I needed while always showing up when it mattered most. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, I felt like I could face the future without fear. I didn't know what would happen between us, but I knew I wanted to find out. The thought of the life we could build together, of the moments we could share, made my heart swell. As the days went by, I found myself more comfortable in my own skin. I wasn't just recovering from surgery anymore. I was rediscovering who I was. Ethan had a way of making me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. It wasn't just the fact that he cared about my physical recovery. It was the way he took the time to truly understand me. One evening, after another successful physical therapy session, I was sitting in my room when Ethan came in. He had that familiar smile on his face, the kind that always made my heart skip a beat. "Hey," he said softly, his voice carrying that same warmth that had drawn me to him from the very beginning. "How's the recovery going?" I smiled up at him, a feeling of comfort settling deep within me. "Better," I said, my voice filled with genuine relief. "It's hard work, but I think I'm getting stronger every day." Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I can see that. You're doing great, Lena. I'm proud of you." I felt a surge of warmth flood my chest. His words meant so much more than just a compliment. They were a reminder that I wasn't in this alone. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling my cheeks flush slightly. "It's because of you that I'm getting through this. You've been here every step of the way." Ethan took a step closer, his presence filling the space between us. He reached out, his hand brushing against mine, sending a ripple of warmth through me. "I'm just doing my job, Lena," he said, his voice gentle. "But I care about you. I want to see you thrive. And I'm not going anywhere." His words brought a sense of comfort I hadn't realized I needed. I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could let go of my fears. I didn't have to hide anymore. He was here, with me, and that was enough. "Ethan," I began, my voice shaking slightly. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything. About us." His expression softened, and he moved to sit beside me. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his tone gentle, like he was waiting for me to say what I needed to say. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I know we've been taking things slow, and I've been scared of getting hurt, scared of what this means. But I don't want to be afraid anymore. I don't want to hide from what I'm feeling." I paused, feeling the weight of my words sink in. Ethan didn't say anything at first, and for a moment, the silence felt thick. But then, he placed his hand gently over mine, his touch grounding me. "Lena, I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I know this is new, and it's okay to take your time. But I want you to know that I'm here, no matter what. I care about you, more than I've let on." My heart fluttered at his words. I had always feared letting anyone in, always pushed people away when things got too close. But with Ethan, it felt different. His presence didn't feel like pressure. It felt like safety. "I don't want to lose this," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I don't want to lose what we have." Ethan smiled softly, his thumb brushing over my hand. "You won't lose me, Lena. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together, one step at a time." The sincerity in his voice, the unwavering certainty in his eyes, made me believe him. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was alone in my struggles. "Thank you, Ethan," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "For being patient with me. For being here." He leaned in slightly, his face close to mine, and his eyes softened. "There's no one else I'd rather be with, Lena. You don't have to thank me. This is where I want to be." A lump formed in my throat as I took in his words. It was hard to believe that someone as incredible as Ethan could care about me, but in that moment, I realized I wasn't just healing physically. I was healing emotionally, too. Ethan was the missing piece I hadn't known I needed. As we sat there together, just the two of us, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't as scared as I had thought. Maybe I could trust again, and maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful. We didn't have all the answers, and that was okay. What mattered was that we were facing this together. And with that thought, I finally felt the weight of the fear lift from my chest. I didn't need to have everything figured out. All I needed was to take the next step with Ethan by my side. I sat quietly, the evening sun casting a soft golden glow through the window, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. Ethan's words, the quiet promise that he was there for me, had settled deep in my heart. I had always been guarded, always afraid of getting too close to someone, but with him, it felt different. He wasn't rushing me. He wasn't asking for anything more than my trust, and somehow that was all I needed. As I sat there, lost in thought, I heard the familiar sound of the door opening, and Ethan stepped in. He had that smile on his face, the one that always made me feel safe. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and easy. "How's the recovery going?" I smiled back, my heart fluttering at the sight of him. "It's going well. I'm feeling stronger every day." Ethan nodded, clearly pleased with my progress. "I'm glad to hear that. You've been working hard, and it's paying off." I couldn't help but notice the way he was looking at me. There was something in his eyes, something that felt deeper than just concern for my recovery. It was a look I hadn't seen before, one that made my heart race just a little. "Ethan," I said, my voice a little uncertain, "I've been thinking." He raised an eyebrow, his expression softening. "About what?" "About us," I said, my voice quieter now. "About everything. How far we've come." There was a pause, and for a moment, I thought I had said too much. But Ethan didn't look away. He didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped closer, his hand gently brushing against mine, grounding me. "I've been thinking about that too," he said, his voice steady, filled with an unspoken understanding. "I think we've both been moving at a pace that feels right. And that's okay. We don't need to rush anything. What matters is that we're here, together." His words were exactly what I needed to hear. It wasn't about rushing into anything, not about making promises for the future. It was about being present, being in this moment, together. "I don't want to rush either," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "But I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared of what happens when everything changes." Ethan looked at me, his expression soft but serious. "I understand, Lena. I'm scared too. But that's okay. We don't have to have everything figured out right now. What we have is enough. And I'm not going anywhere." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, the weight of my fears starting to lift. I had been so afraid of letting someone in, of trusting someone with my heart. But with Ethan, it felt different. I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to have all the answers. I just had to be me. And he was okay with that. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I've ever felt this way before." Ethan's hand tightened around mine, a silent reassurance that he was there, that he understood. "You don't have to thank me, Lena. I care about you. I always will." The sincerity in his words, the gentleness in his touch, made everything feel real. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of what we had. I could feel my heart opening, the walls I had built around myself slowly crumbling, piece by piece. And for once, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of the future, of the unknown. I was ready to take the next step. "I'm ready, Ethan," I said, the words flowing freely now. "I'm ready to see where this takes us." Ethan's smile lit up the room, and I could feel the warmth of it deep within me. "We'll take it slow," he said, "one step at a time." And, for the first time, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The next few days passed in a quiet, peaceful rhythm. I continued with my physical therapy, feeling stronger each day, but it was the time spent with Ethan that really made a difference. We talked more, shared more, and in each moment, I felt closer to him. He was patient, understanding, and he gave me the space I needed while always being there when I needed him most. I didn't have to rush anything. I didn't have to force anything. What we had was real, and that was enough. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Ethan and I sat together on the small bench by the window. He had been unusually quiet that evening, and I could tell that something was on his mind. "Ethan," I asked, my voice soft. "What's going on?" He turned to me, his eyes soft but intense. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady. "About us. About the future. I know we've both been cautious, and I respect that. But I want you to know something. I'm in this, Lena. I'm all in." My heart skipped a beat at his words, and for a moment, I was speechless. He was opening up to me in a way that I hadn't expected, and it made my chest tighten with emotion. "Ethan," I started, unsure of how to put my thoughts into words. But he silenced me with a soft smile, his hand reaching out to gently take mine. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said, his voice gentle. "I just want you to know that I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." The weight of his words settled over me, and in that moment, I felt a deep sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but with Ethan by my side, I knew that we could face whatever came our way. We didn't need to have it all figured out. All we needed was each other. And that was enough. I had been lying awake for some time, staring at the soft, faded light streaming through the curtains. The day had come and gone in a blur, as days often did, but tonight, there was a strange stillness. Ethan and I had crossed a threshold. It felt like something had shifted, not just in our relationship, but in me. I had spent so much of my life building walls, convincing myself that I didn't need anyone, that I could handle things on my own. But now, with Ethan by my side, I was beginning to see the world differently. What we had was real, something that didn't need to be rushed or defined. We were just two people trying to navigate life and find peace in the chaos. But tonight, as I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was still ahead. There were still things unsaid, things that we hadn't fully explored, and I couldn't help but wonder what would come next. I could hear the soft rhythm of Ethan's breathing from across the room, and I smiled. The warmth of his presence had become something I looked forward to, something that made the world feel a little less overwhelming. As time passed, I found myself more and more attuned to his every movement, to the way he spoke, the way he cared. It was subtle, but it was there, in everything he did. I felt it in the way he made sure I was comfortable before leaving, in the way he always checked in with me, asking how I was doing, not just physically but emotionally. I had never known someone who cared like that. I wasn't sure when it happened, but I realized I didn't just care about him anymore. I was falling for him. I had been afraid of letting someone in, afraid of the vulnerability that came with it, but with Ethan, it felt different. His gentle presence was like a balm to the raw parts of me that I had hidden away for so long. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but in this moment, everything felt right. The quiet sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor broke my thoughts, and I looked up to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his figure bathed in the soft light from the hallway. "Hey," he said, his voice low and soft. "Mind if I join you?" I smiled and patted the spot next to me on the bed. "Of course." He walked in, his usual calm demeanor filling the space between us as he sat down beside me. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there. Close but not too close, his presence reassuring in its simplicity. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, and I turned to face him, feeling an odd mixture of excitement and uncertainty. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice gentle but curious. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to put the swirling thoughts in my mind into words. "I was just thinking about how much things have changed," I said softly, looking at my hands in my lap. "How much I've changed." Ethan's hand reached out, brushing against mine. The touch was light, almost tentative, but it sent a shiver through me. "You've come a long way, Lena. And so have I. We're both learning, growing, and that's all we can do, right? Take it one step at a time." His words resonated deeply with me, and I felt the weight of them settle in my chest. There was no rush, no deadline, just this moment. This connection between us. "Yeah," I whispered. "One step at a time." The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that felt like a shared understanding, a peaceful pause before something bigger. I had spent so much of my life avoiding moments like this, afraid to feel vulnerable, to let someone truly see me. But with Ethan, I felt safe. I felt like I could be me. Slowly, I turned to face him fully, my heart racing as I gathered the courage to speak. "Ethan," I began, my voice soft but steady. "I don't want to overthink this, but I want you to know that I'm in this. I'm in this with you." Ethan's eyes softened, and a slow, gentle smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I know you are, Lena. I'm here too, and I'm not going anywhere." His words were exactly what I needed to hear. No pressure, no rushing. Just the simple truth that we were both here, together. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could let go of the weight I had been carrying. Ethan wasn't just my doctor anymore. He was my partner, someone I could rely on, someone who cared deeply for me. I didn't have to be afraid of the future anymore, not when. I had him by my side. "I'm glad you're here," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you." Ethan gently squeezed my hand, his smile softening. "You don't have to worry about that. You're not alone in this, Lena. We're in this together." His words felt like a promise, one I could trust. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe it. We didn't need to have everything figured out. We didn't need to rush. What mattered was that we had each other, and that was enough. As the evening wore on, we sat there together, not saying much, but sharing everything. In that silence, I realized that this was the beginning of something beautiful, something I wasn't sure how to define, but knew was worth the leap. We didn't need to define it right away. All that mattered was the way we were moving forward together, side by side, one step at a time. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window. The sun was just beginning to rise, and I could see the soft golden light filtering in through the curtains. It was a new day, a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a chance to take on the world. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions and healing, but as I sat up in bed, I felt stronger, more at peace with myself. Ethan had been there for me every step of the way, and it was more than just the physical recovery now. Our connection had deepened into something that felt real, something that was more than I had ever expected. I had spent so much of my life putting up walls, afraid of letting anyone in, afraid of what might happen if I allowed myself to be vulnerable. But with Ethan, I found myself slowly letting go of those fears. I had learned to trust him, and with that trust, I had opened myself up to the possibility of something I had never dared to hope for. A genuine connection with someone who cared about me, someone who wanted to be there for me, not just as my doctor, but as something more. As I sat there, lost in thought, the door to my room opened, and I turned. To see Ethan standing in the doorway. His usual smile was there, that warm, comforting smile that always seemed to melt away any lingering doubt. "Morning," he said, his voice low and full of warmth. "How are you feeling today?" I smiled back at him, feeling the familiar flutter in my chest. "Better," I replied, stretching slightly. "I feel like I'm finally getting stronger." Ethan crossed the room and sat down beside me on the bed. His presence was comforting, as it always was. "I'm glad to hear that," he said softly, his gaze meeting mine. "You've been doing an amazing job, Lena. You've come so far." His words meant more to me than I could express. It wasn't just the physical progress he was talking about. He was acknowledging the emotional journey I had been on, too. "Thank you, Ethan," I whispered, my voice catching slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You've always had the strength, Lena," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I just helped you realize it." There was something in the way he looked at me, something that made my heart skip a beat. The warmth in his eyes, the genuine care that radiated from him. It was impossible to ignore. I had never felt so seen, so understood, by anyone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being vulnerable with someone. Ethan had made me feel safe, and I realized, with a sudden clarity, that I had fallen for him. I had fallen for the person he was, for the way he made me feel like I mattered, the way he treated me with respect and kindness, without expecting anything in return. But even with this realization, there was a small part of me that still held back. The fear of what could happen, of what it would mean for our lives, still lingered in the back of my mind. "Ethan," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "I've been thinking a lot about us." He turned to face me, his expression serious, but there was no hesitation in his eyes. "What about us?" he asked, his tone gentle. "I'm not sure what the future holds." I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I know I want to face it with you. I don't want to hide from what I'm feeling anymore. I'm ready to be with you, not just as my doctor, but as more." Ethan's hand found mine, his touch gentle but firm. "Lena," he said softly, "I've been thinking the same thing. I care about you, more than I've let on. And I want to be with you, too. Not just in this moment, but for whatever comes next." The weight of his words settled over me, and I felt my heart swell. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just walking through life by myself. I wasn't carrying all the weight alone. With Ethan by my side, I felt like I could face anything. There was still uncertainty, yes, but that was a part of life. What mattered was that we were in this together. "I don't want to rush anything," I said, my voice steady but filled with sincerity. "I want to take this slow, to see where it goes. But I'm ready to be with you, Ethan. For real." Ethan smiled, his eyes softening with understanding. "We'll take it slow, Lena. One day at a time." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future. The uncertainty of what was to come didn't scare me anymore. Because whatever happened, we would face it together. And that thought, that certainty, was enough. Over the next few days, everything seemed to fall into place. We continued to spend time together, talking, laughing, and getting to know each other more deeply. Our connection deepened, and I felt more comfortable with the idea of letting myself love someone, of truly trusting them with my heart. We had our moments of doubt, Moments where we questioned whether this was the right thing to do, but we always came back to the simple truth. We cared about each other. And that was enough. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset from my room, Ethan turned to me, his expression serious but kind. "Lena," he said quietly, "I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His words were simple, but they meant everything to me. I nodded, my heart full. "I know," I said softly. "And I'm here too." With those words, I felt like we had reached a new level in our relationship, one that was built on trust, mutual respect, and love. We didn't have all the answers, but we were willing to face whatever came next, together. And that was more than enough for me. I woke up to the soft, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor, a sound I had grown accustomed to over the past few weeks. The morning light had already crept into the room, casting a warm, golden glow across the bed where I lay. I stretched slowly, feeling the familiar tightness in my muscles, but it was no longer the intense soreness I had felt when I first arrived. Physical therapy was working. I was healing, and not just physically. The emotional wall I had built around myself was starting to crumble, piece by piece. I had come a long way since Ethan and I had first started to open up to each other. What had started as a doctor-patient relationship had transformed into something more, a deep, personal connection that had changed both of our lives in ways neither of us had expected. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind. With Ethan by my side, I had started to face my fears, to trust again. He had been patient, understanding, and above all, he had given me the space to heal at my own pace. But the most important thing he had done was make me feel safe. Safe to be myself, safe to express my emotions, and safe to believe in something more than just recovery. As I sat up in bed, I looked around the room, noticing the small changes in myself and in the space I had once considered a place of fear and uncertainty. Now, it felt like a place of calm, a place where I could breathe, a place where I could be open to what the future held. I was still in the process of healing, but I wasn't just healing my body. I was healing my heart. The door opened, and I turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway. His presence filled the room, and I could feel the warmth of his smile even before he spoke. "Good morning," he said, his voice smooth and comforting. "How are you feeling today?" I smiled back at him, feeling a surge of gratitude and affection. "Better," I replied, stretching again. "Every day feels a little easier." Ethan walked into the room and sat down beside me on the bed, his usual calm demeanor never wavering. "I'm glad to hear that," he said softly, his eyes meeting mine. "You've made incredible progress, Lena. I'm proud of you." His words meant more to me than he could know. It wasn't just the physical progress. It was the emotional growth that I had made, the way I had allowed myself to trust him and, in turn, trust myself. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling a warmth spread through me. "You've been amazing through all of this." Ethan smiled, his eyes softening. "You've done the hard work, Lena. I'm just here to support you." I looked at him, feeling a deep sense of connection. There was no doubt in my mind that I cared for him deeply. He had become more than just a doctor to me. He had become someone I trusted, someone I couldn't imagine my life without. I didn't know what the future held, but with him by my side, I was willing to face whatever came. "Ethan," I began, my voice a little shaky as I took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about everything. About us." He turned to me, his expression serious but gentle. "What about us?" he asked, his voice soft, patient. I hesitated for a moment, gathering my thoughts. "I just want you to know that I'm ready. I'm ready to move forward with you, to see where this takes us." Ethan's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, something that made my heart flutter. "I'm glad to hear that," he said quietly. "Because I'm ready too." I felt my chest tighten with emotion. The fear that had been lingering, the uncertainty about what this all meant, began to fade away in that moment. We didn't need to have everything figured out. What mattered was that we were both ready to take this next step together. "I don't know what comes next," I said, my voice steady now. "But I know I want to find out with you." Ethan reached for my hand, gently brushing his fingers against mine. The simple touch sent a wave of warmth through me. "We'll take it one day at a time," he said, his voice filled with a sense of calm certainty. "No pressure. Just us, moving forward together." His words felt like a promise, and I found myself smiling at the thought. We didn't need to rush. We didn't need to force anything. We just needed to be present with each other, to take each moment as it came. I like the sound of that, I said, squeezing his hand gently. One day at a time. Ethan smiled back, his eyes locking with mine. Exactly. And no matter what happens, we'll face it together. The room seemed to grow quieter as we sat there, the world outside fading away. There were no more doubts, no more fears. Just the two of us, sharing this quiet moment, letting the uncertainty of the future fall away. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't alone in my journey of recovery, and I wasn't alone in my life. Ethan was right beside me, and for the first time, I felt truly ready to face whatever the future held. The healing process wasn't just about my body, it was about my heart, too. And with Ethan by my side, I knew that I could trust again, I could love again, and that I was finally ready to take the next step in my life. The future, whatever it may hold, was no longer a source of fear. It was a new chapter, and I was ready to begin it with Ethan. I woke up to the gentle hum of the hospital room, the early morning light pouring through the blinds, casting soft shadows on the walls. The air felt different today, lighter, somehow. I had been recovering steadily, but more than just the physical changes, something else had shifted. I no longer felt the weight of fear or uncertainty that had once consumed me. Instead, there was a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that had taken root deep inside me. I wasn't just healing, I was growing emotionally, and it was all because of Ethan. Over the past few weeks, he had become more than just my doctor. He had become a constant presence in my life, someone I could lean on, someone I could trust with the parts of me I had kept hidden for so long. What had started as a clinical relationship had blossomed into something more, something real, something that made me believe in the possibility of love again. As I lay there, basking in the warmth of the sunlight, I thought about everything we had shared. I thought about the quiet moments, the tender gestures, the way Ethan had never pressured me, never tried to rush things. He had always respected my boundaries, but there was no mistaking the growing connection between us. It wasn't just about attraction. It was about understanding, mutual respect, and the simple joy of being in each other's presence. I had never expected this. I had never imagined that a doctor-patient relationship would evolve into something so beautiful, but here we were. And now, I knew what I wanted. I didn't want to live in fear of the future anymore. I didn't want to second-guess what I was feeling. I wanted to move forward with Ethan, to see where this could go, to explore what was blossoming between us. I felt ready. The door to my room opened, and I turned to see Ethan standing there, as always, a comforting presence. His face lit up when he saw me sitting up in bed, the smile that had become so familiar to me spreading across his face. "Good morning," he said, his voice as gentle as ever. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," I said, my voice steady, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "I'm finally starting to feel like myself again." Ethan walked over to my bedside, his eyes scanning me with that familiar look of concern, but I could see the pride in them too. "That's great to hear. You've come a long way." He sat down beside me, his presence grounding me in the moment. There was a quiet intimacy in the air between us, an understanding that had deepened over time. It wasn't just about the recovery anymore, it was about us. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft but filled with meaning. "You've done more than just heal physically. You've made incredible emotional progress too. I'm happy to be part of that journey." I felt a lump form in my throat. I hadn't realized just how much his words meant until that moment. I had come to depend on him in ways I hadn't expected, and now, with everything falling into place, I realized that I wanted more. "Ethan," I began, my voice a little shaky, "I've been thinking a lot about us. About everything we've shared." He looked at me, his expression softening, as if he knew exactly what I was going to say. "I've been thinking about that too," he said quietly, his hand brushing against mine. "And I think I'm ready to take this further." My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a grand declaration, but it was enough. Enough to make everything feel so much clearer. I had spent so long being afraid of what might happen, afraid of the unknown. But now, sitting next to Ethan, I realized that the future didn't need to be scary. We didn't need all the answers. We just needed to be together. "I don't know where this is going to take us," I said, my voice steady now. "But I know I want to be with you. I'm ready to see where this goes, together." Ethan's smile widened, and for a moment, I thought my heart might explode from the intensity of what I was feeling. I've wanted that too, he said, his voice full of warmth. We don't have to rush anything. We'll take it one step at a time, but I'm with you. Always. I reached out to take his hand, the connection between us feeling stronger than ever. In that moment, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The uncertainty of the future no longer felt like a burden. It felt like an adventure. The days that followed were filled with small, meaningful moments, quiet conversations, shared laughter, and the simple joy of spending time together. I continued with my therapy, growing stronger each day, and with each passing moment, I felt myself becoming more comfortable in my own skin. But it was the time spent with Ethan that made everything feel complete. He was always there, encouraging me, making me laugh, helping me see the beauty in the little things. He never pressured me, never tried to rush us into anything we weren't ready for. He simply showed up, day after day, offering his support, his kindness, and his love. And as the days passed, I realized that this, what we were building together, was something I never thought I'd have. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't without its uncertainties. But it was real, and that was enough for me. One afternoon, as we sat together on the balcony of my room, the sun beginning to set, Ethan turned to me, his expression serious but filled with a quiet determination. "Lena," he said, his voice steady, "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want to face it with you." I looked at him, my heart full. "I feel the same way," I whispered, a smile spreading across my face. And in that moment, everything felt right. The uncertainty of the past, the fear of what was to come, all of it melted away. Together, we could face anything. Together, we had everything we needed. I woke up the next morning to the quiet sound of the hospital room, a familiar rhythm of life that had become my new normal. The warmth of the sunlight pouring in through the window filled the room, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a deep sense of calm. The world outside felt distant, almost irrelevant to the peaceful space I had created here in this room with Ethan. My recovery was coming along, but it wasn't just my body healing, it was my heart. I had spent so much time guarding it, keeping it locked away, afraid to let anyone in. But Ethan had found a way to unlock that door, slowly, patiently, until I realized that I didn't have to be afraid of love. I didn't have to be afraid of letting someone care for me. I sat up in bed and looked around, noticing how much had changed over the past few weeks. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. I was no longer the person who came into this hospital, uncertain and distant. I had learned to embrace the moments of connection, to open up to the possibility of something more. The journey wasn't easy, but it had been worth every step. Just then, the door opened, and Ethan walked in, his presence filling the room like it always did. He smiled when he saw me sitting up, his eyes lighting up with a warmth that made my heart flutter. "Morning," he said, his voice low and soothing. "How are you today?" I smiled back at him, feeling a rush of affection. "Better," I said. "Stronger every day." He crossed the room and sat down beside me, his hand gently brushing against mine. There was no need for words in that simple gesture. It spoke volumes. His presence was everything to me. "You've been incredible, Lena," Ethan said, his voice soft but full of meaning. "You've come so far. I'm really proud of you." I looked up at him, my heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've been there every step of the way." Ethan's expression softened, and he gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You've always had the strength inside you, Lena. I just helped you see it." The sincerity in his words hit me deeply. He was right. It hadn't been just about the physical recovery. It had been about finding my strength again, and it was because of Ethan that I was able to do that. We sat in silence for a moment, the quiet stretching between us, comfortable and unspoken. I felt safe with him, more than I ever thought I could. "Ethan," I said, breaking the silence, my voice steady but with a hint of uncertainty. "I've been thinking about us." His gaze never wavered, and he leaned in slightly, as if waiting for me to continue. "What about us?" he asked, his voice gentle, patient. I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of emotion rise in my chest. "I don't want to hold back anymore. I'm ready to be with you. I've never felt like this before, and I don't want to run from it." Ethan's eyes softened, and a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I've been ready for a long time," he said, his voice full of warmth. "We don't need to rush, Lena. We'll take it slow, but I'm with you for as long as you want me to be. The weight of his words settled in my chest, and I realized how much I had been holding back, how much fear I had been carrying with me. But now, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to take this step, to move forward with Ethan by my side. I want that too, I whispered, the words feeling like a release. I want to be with you, Ethan. I've never been sure of anything like I'm sure of this. His smile widened, and I felt a warmth spread through me. It was like the last of the doubts I had carried for so long were finally gone. We didn't need to know everything. We didn't need to have a perfect plan for the future. What mattered was that we were here, together, and that was enough. As the days passed, I continued to heal, both physically and emotionally. Every day felt like another step closer to the person I was meant to be. Ethan and I spent more time together, sharing quiet moments, laughing at silly jokes, and slowly building a life together, one step at a time. There were still moments of uncertainty, moments where the fear of the unknown crept back in, but every time I looked at Ethan, I felt grounded. He was my anchor, my constant, and I knew that no matter what, we would face whatever came our way together. One evening, as the sun began to set and the room was bathed in soft golden light, Ethan and I sat together on the small balcony just outside my room. The city stretched out before us, quiet and peaceful, the world moving at its own pace. I leaned against the railing, and Ethan stood beside me, his presence a comforting weight. "It's beautiful," I said quietly, looking out at the horizon. "It is," Ethan agreed, his voice low, "but I think you make it even more beautiful." I turned to look at him, meeting his eyes, and for a moment, everything else faded away. "I never thought I'd find something like this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I never thought I'd feel this way again." Ethan reached for my hand, his touch gentle, as if he was afraid to break the moment. "You've always had it inside you, Lena. I'm just glad I get to be here with you, watching it unfold." My heart swelled at his words. There was no pressure, no expectations, just a quiet understanding between us. We didn't have to know what the future held. We didn't have to have everything planned out. All we needed was this moment, this connection, and the knowledge that we were moving forward together. And that was enough. As the stars began to appear in the sky above, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Whatever the future held, I knew that with Ethan by my side, I could face it. And that was the most beautiful thing I had ever known. I woke up the next morning with a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. The early morning light filtered in through the window, casting soft shadows across the room. It was a new day, a new chapter, and as I stretched, I felt the familiar weight of my recovery, but this time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a part of the journey I had willingly embraced. Ethan had become a constant presence in my life, but more than that, he had become my partner in this journey. It was no longer just about physical healing, but about opening myself up to the possibility of something real. We had taken our time, allowing the relationship to grow at its own pace. And now, there was no doubt in my mind that I was ready for whatever came next. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions. The walls I had spent so many years building had come down, piece by piece. And with Ethan, I had learned to trust again. I had learned that love wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace. I had never imagined I would find this kind of connection, especially with someone like Ethan. But here we were. And for the first time, I was no longer afraid to let go. I was no longer afraid to take a leap of faith. The door to my room creaked open, and I turned to see Ethan standing there, that familiar smile on his face. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to see me every morning. "How are you feeling today?" I smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Better," I said, my voice steady, but full of gratitude. "I feel like I'm finally finding my footing again." Ethan's eyes softened as he stepped into the room. He crossed the distance between us with that same calm, reassuring presence that I had come to rely on. He sat down beside me, his hand finding mine effortlessly. It was as if we were in sync without even trying. "I'm really proud of you," he said, his voice low but filled with sincerity. "You've come so far, Lena. Not just physically, but emotionally. You're stronger than you know." I looked at him, feeling my heart swell with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you," I whispered, feeling the words rise from deep within me. "You've been there for me every step of the way." Ethan's smile deepened, his fingers gently brushing against mine. "You've always had that strength inside you," he said softly. "I just helped you see it." The tenderness in his voice, the way he looked at me as though I was the most important person in the world, made everything else fade away. I felt safe in his presence, more than I had ever felt with anyone else. I had spent so long running from my emotions, hiding from the possibility of getting hurt, but with Ethan, I felt like I was ready to open up completely. "Ethan," I began, my voice shaking slightly with the weight of the words I was about to say. "I've been thinking about everything. About us. And I know we've taken it slow, and I know we still don't have all the answers, but I want you to know that I'm ready. I'm ready for this, for you." Ethan looked at me with such warmth in his eyes that for a moment, I felt like time had stopped. He didn't say anything at first, just took my hand and held it between both of his. And then, when he spoke, his voice was filled with quiet certainty. "I'm ready too, Lena," he said, his words like a promise. "We don't need to rush. We don't need to figure everything out right now. What matters is that we're here, together." His words echoed in my heart, and I realized, in that moment, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The future was uncertain, yes, but it no longer felt like something to fear. With Ethan by my side, I could face whatever came next. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. The days passed, each one blending into the next in a quiet rhythm of recovery and connection. I continued my physical therapy, feeling stronger and more confident with every passing day. But it was the time spent with Ethan that made all the difference. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing, sharing our hopes and fears, laughing over the smallest things, and in those moments, I realized that this was what I had been missing all along. The feeling of being seen, of being understood, of having someone who truly cared for me, not just as a patient, but as a person. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset from my hospital room, Ethan turned to me with a look in his eyes that made my heart flutter. "Lena," he said, his voice quiet but filled with meaning, "I don't know what the future holds, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His words were simple, but they carried more weight than anything else he had said. In that moment, I felt like I had found something rare and precious. Something real. "I know," I said softly, a smile tugging at my lips. "And I'm here too." The silence that followed was comfortable, a shared understanding passing between us. We didn't need to say anything more. We didn't need to have all the answers. What we had was enough. The world outside felt distant, irrelevant, as we sat there, side by side. The future, whatever it held, no longer seemed so frightening. With Ethan, I knew that I wasn't alone. And that was all that mattered. I wasn't sure what the road ahead would look like. There would be challenges, of course, and moments of doubt. But I also knew that with each other, we could face whatever came our way. We didn't need to have it all figured out right now. One step at a time. Together. I woke up feeling a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. The sunlight gently streamed through the hospital window, making the room feel warmer and more welcoming. As I sat up, stretching, I realized how far I had come on my journey of recovery, both physically and emotionally. The walls I had built around myself were finally starting to come down, piece by piece. And it was all because of the special connection I had with Ethan. What began as a professional doctor-patient relationship had blossomed into something deeper, and I realized that this journey was more than just about healing. It was about learning to trust again, to open up, and to embrace love. As the days passed, I found myself becoming more and more comfortable with the idea of a future I once feared. In the midst of this transformation, I reflected on how different my life had become. I was no longer alone in my struggles. I had someone by my side who truly cared for me. Ethan had been there for me every step of the way, and our bond had grown stronger with each passing day. We had both been cautious, taking things slow, but now I knew that I was ready to embrace what lay ahead, with him. The connection we shared felt so natural, so right, and I could see a future with him in it. As we spent more time together, I realized that the world outside felt far less intimidating. Whatever the future held, I was no longer afraid to face it. Our time together wasn't just about recovering from surgery, it was about building something real. We had no guarantees, but the quiet moments of understanding we shared were enough to make me believe that we could face anything, together. These millionaire stories are proof that no matter how unlikely or challenging life may seem, with patience and understanding, anything is possible. It didn't take long for me to see that the relationship I was building with Ethan was just as valuable as any material success. It was about connection, trust, and love. Together, we moved forward, not knowing exactly where the road would take us, but knowing that as long as we were together, we could face anything. In a world filled with uncertainties, these millionaire stories show that it is the love and connection we share that make the journey worthwhile. The future is uncertain, but it no longer feels like something to fear. It feels like an adventure, one that I'm ready to take with Ethan by my side. As the days went on, I realized that our story was just beginning. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other. And that was enough for me. The comfort and love that Ethan provided were priceless, and the more I allowed myself to trust in it, the more I realized that true wealth isn't measured by money, but by the people we have in our lives and the bonds we form. Like so many millionaire stories, our story was a reminder that love, trust, and patience are the true keys to happiness. And with Ethan, I knew I had found everything I needed. Together, we were ready to face whatever came next.